The body uses glucose as its main source of energy. Glucose comes from foods that contain carbohydrates, which are released and absorbed into the bloodstream after food is digested. The glucose in the bloodstream needs to move into body tissues so that cells can use it for energy. Excess glucose is also stored in the liver or converted to fat.
Coffee is a beloved beverage known for its ability to fine-tune your focus and boost your energy levels. In fact, many people depend on their daily cup of coffee when they wake up to get their day started on the right foot. In addition to its energizing effects, coffee has been linked to a long list of potential health benefits, giving you more reasons to get brewing.
The most widely accepted model for planet formation, known as the nebula hypothesis, begins with a swirling disk of gas and dust left over material from the birth of a nearby star. At some point in time, gravity triumphs over the pressure supporting this cosmic dust, which then starts to rotate, quickly collapsing under its own gravity. There are other components, aside from the wheels and rails, that add to the noise a train makes when it passes. Older trains had their air conditioning units underneath the carriage, but modern trains have been lowered to allow people with less mobility to enter the carriage more easily. As a result, air conditioning units are now on top of the carriage, where they add to the train noise. The use of technology for the inclusion and empowerment of people with disabilities is not new from the creation of Braille and the first hearing aid to the invention of the wheelchair. For disabled people, new assistive technology can make all the difference, while technology and innovation are breaking down the barriers to achieving full participation.
The robotic system is composed of a floating platform with 8 cables that are connected to a mobile robot that will move around on the seafloor beneath it to collect waste items in a box, using a gripper, hook or suction device depending on the size of the litter. The orientation of the robot can be controlled by adjusting the tension of the cables. Online speech has become such an influential way of experiencing politics today, not just participating in democratic processes like elections, but also the way we lead our daily democratic life through digital communication. If these sorts of irreverent and vitriolic exchanges are so prominent online, then we need to see how we can bring nuance to understanding them. To withstand the forces of nature and the huge forces the rotation itself generates, blades are manufactured with a multilayer coat of armor. Typically, the outer layer erodes during operation and the inner layers can become detached. Although the lifespan of a turbine is theoretically 25 years, current medium-sized systems typically require extensive maintenance at about 10 years due to blade deterioration.
Hydrogen will play several roles in our future. For transport, we now see several manufacturers launching cars powered by electricity produced in a hydrogen fuel cell, and this will happen even more in the near future. Fuel cell buses are also an attractive solution for public transport. Also, engineers are now even starting to consider using fuel cells and hydrogen to power trains. Desalination is the answer to long-term water security, but it's also expensive and energy-intensive. The good news is that scientists are developing some viable solutions. The first desalination plant in Europe was built in Spain nearly a half-century ago. Since then, facilities have sprung up in water-stressed regions throughout Europe. Studying how mouse brains process chemosignals will help researchers understand the general principles of how their brains form social memories and could help scientists identify what happens when these functions go wrong. Eventually, this may help scientists understand what happens in people whose ability to recognize others is impaired or those who have difficulties with social interactions caused by autism. A newly created form of carbon in a mesh just 1 atom thick is tantalizing scientists with hints that it could sharply improve rechargeable batteries and allow wires so small that they can operate at a scale where metals fail. The material is highly conductive and may prove able to store more electrical energy than even graphene, the astonishing atomic thickness carbon honeycomb material identified nearly 20 years ago. The stratosphere is the next layer up from Earth's surface. Temperatures in the stratosphere increase with altitude. A high concentration of ozone, a molecule composed of 3 atoms of oxygen, makes up the ozone layer of the stratosphere. This ozone absorbs some of the incoming solar radiation, shielding life on Earth from potentially harmful ultraviolet light.
People have used biomass energy from living things since the earliest cavemen first made wood fires for cooking or keeping warm. Biomass is organic, meaning it is made of material that comes from living organisms, such as plants and animals. The most common biomass materials used for energy are plants, wood, and waste. Over time, a split would have appeared in wolf populations. He says those wolves that feared humans, and those that didn't. So this would have facilitated, I think, the domestication process. At which point humans deliberately took wolves as pets. But that domestication process, France says, may have happened more than once, first in the West, in Europe, and again in the Far East, in Asia. A simple barometric altimeter includes a sealed metal chamber, a spring, and a pointer that shows altitude in meters or feet. The chamber expands as air pressure decreases and contracts as it increases, bending the spring and moving the pointer. An altimeter can be mounted on an aircraft's instrumental panel or worn on a person's wrist. Prevailing winds are winds that blow from a single direction over a specific area of the Earth. Areas where prevailing winds meet are called convergence zones. Generally, prevailing winds blow east-west rather than north-south. This happens because Earth's rotation generates what is known as the Coriolis effect. The Coriolis effect makes wind systems twist counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere.
The icehouse structures, of which 4 still remain intact, are located south of Sultan Kala. These large, conically domed earthen structures would have had sheets of ice built up on the ground level over the course of the winter to provide year-round ice supplies. The patriarchal family is one run by the father or eldest male of a household. He usually decides the duties of the women and children in the family. In this role, the patriarch solves family disputes and divides the family's wealth. The patriarch is also the spiritual leader of the family because he is thought to be the closest to the spirits of the family's ancestors. Medieval mapmakers supposedly inscribed the phrase "Here be dragons" on maps showing unknown regions of the world. Unfortunately, apart from an inscription on a globe, this claim is unfounded. Although there were no dragons and the inscription "Here be dragons" was virtually never used, some of the purported earliest mapmakers did have to deal with real and formidable megafauna.